This is Hemant.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. If you like what you're listening to, please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast. $1 gets you early episodes. And how was your trip?
It was good.
You went to Houston.
I did. I went
by the way, give us all the stars on iTunes.
I was really surprised.
Don't want to forget that.
You're sort of off your game today.
I really am.
This is your third take.
Yeah.
Listen,
Back to Houston.
So yeah, I spent this past weekend in Houston. I spoke to the humanists of Houston on a panel and Houston Oasis. It was very cool. I saw some of your neat museums, Houston. Your people are very kind. And yeah, it was great. It was a really good experience. I think the Houston Oasis thing, it was definitely filmed, so it should be released at some point. The panel wasn't.
Was not filmed.
Was not filmed or recorded, which I double-checked because I sort of laid down some shit. And I was like, I just need to make sure nobody else can hear it who's not in this particular room. But it was great.
Is that the part where you talk smack about me?
Yeah. Oh, my God. Like, nonstop.
Yeah.
But thank you so much to everybody over there for inviting me and giving me a warm welcome. And yeah, it was great. It was
awesome.
Good times.
And before we start, I want to make sure I thank some of the newer Patreon subscribers who I didn't get a chance to thank in previous episodes.
You didn't get a chance to, or you forgot hard?
Shh, I'm trying to live up to expectations here. So special thanks to April W, Chris A, Meryl F. Thank you so much for your support. We
Thanks,
really appreciate
guys.
it. There's so many stories I want to get to.
What a week, huh?
It's been a week.
Can we start? Do you have anything about the bombing or the mail bombs?
No.
I just wanted to briefly touch on that because it is so wild that I think as of our recording, so we're recording Thursday night again, October 25th, was it 8 bombs that were mailed out to higher ups in the Democratic Party, vocal critics of Trump, and the reaction to it has been fucking wild. Like this false flag thing. So a lot of people are accusing liberals of sending bombs to their own people to
gin up sympathy before midterms.
But they're real ass bombs.
Right. Why would we want to get rid of...
Right. Like nobody put baking soda in an envelope and called it anthrax. Like these are real ass bombs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how is this not the biggest news story of the year? Like this is terrorism. This is domestic terrorism. And people are like, well, probably they're doing it to themselves. Because what easier way to drum up sympathy than launch a full-fledged bomb attack on some higher-ups? Mm-hmm. Cool plan.
Which would likely go off by not the people themselves, but the people who handle their mail and go through it.
It is just the story itself is...
This is just U.S. politics now. This is how it works when you encourage people to just assume the worst.
Assume everybody's being dishonest with you because you're being dishonest with everybody, so everybody else must also be lying.
Right.
It's just the fact that this is happening is so wild and so scary, but the reaction by people is just next level bananas cuckoo. It is this is what this weird partisan rhetoric has gotten us, that you think we're sending ourselves bombs? What the fuck is happening? Anyway, that's just been rocking my whole world. Anyway, on to atheism stuff.
Let me start with this story out of Tasmania, the Australian state.
I've been to Tasmania.
Have you?
It's really lovely.
There you go.
There are kangaroos there.
Would love to go. They may become the first state, I think in Australia, not the world, but in Australia, to just get rid of gender designations on birth certificates.
Oh, interesting.
And this is something that transgender people have been fighting for a while.
Sure.
And, part of me, this is the ignorant part, was just I don't see why it's a big deal. I get why transgender people might not want to do it or don't want to do it, but I don't know why this is a law or why there is... I don't know what the opposition is to this idea. And the truth is, when I looked into it, I still can't find any good opposition to the idea, because the question that one of my co-writers said on Friendly Atheists is, seriously, what happens? What do you do with the gender on your birth certificate? Because if you ask me, the answer is nothing. I've never used it once. No one's ever asked me.
Yeah.
No one's had to pull it out to confirm anything. It's never done anything for me.
I don't know where my birth certificate is.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter because you're not Obama. So, like, the fact that, if you got rid of gender on the birth certificate, it would cause zero harm to cis people who present and are that gender, but it would be very meaningful to trans people who are affected by it.
Right.
Because you could say, show me your birth certificate. I want to make sure the way you present yourself matches up with your biological sex. Like, they could use it against them.
Yeah, and we're going to get into, like, the trans stuff later today, but it's so fucking wild that, like, people are like, you have to match your birth certificate. Like, I don't know where my birth certificate is right now. I've never seen my husband's. Like, let's not pretend your birth certificate is like this thing that everybody carries around as like their valor, like their momentous thing of this is who I am and this is who I shall be.
It's something that takes 2 seconds for a doctor to do.
Right. Like,
it really doesn't have that much meaning as opposed to how you present yourself with that.
My name isn't the same as what's on my birth certificate. Are you going to fight me over it? Like, if I ran for president, so I'm going to be like, well, it says Jessica Ann Blumke on her birth certificate, but her legal name is Jessica Blumke Greif. Who is she trying to fool?
Now, the interesting thing is there are a couple of people in the government in Tasmania who are pushing back against this. Not like conservative Christians and ours, but they are pushing back. And one of their arguments is, well, no one else has done this, so we don't know what the consequences are.
Oh, good point, Tasmania. You fucking nailed it.
Which is like when you're being a leader in something, part of it is you have to lead.
Someone's from behind.
Seriously. And the other thing, I don't know what potential consequences they think. What are they worried about that would happen?
Idea.
I tried thinking of some. I couldn't think of anything. And by the way, Tasmania has some really discriminatory laws against transgender people. And this is not transgender. Cross-dressing, a separate issue, was illegal until 2000.
2000?
They are late to the game on a lot of
AD?
these issues. Yes. So I hope it happens. It'll be a huge benefit to people who are trans, and it doesn't affect anybody else.
Right.
It's a good request to make. It's an important request to make, and I don't know what. I mean, I'm at me. I don't know what the opposition is to this. That you have to have your gender, because I've literally never thought about what the gender is on my birth certificate until I read this story.
No, not at all. And I really think it's interesting that you said cross-dressing was illegal until 2000. It seems like a lot of countries have like just chilled for a while and then they're just like going full bore. Like Ireland is what's coming to mind of like they decided like, okay, well, homosexual, gay marriage is legal and fuck the Catholic Church. And also like they're like, okay, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do it big. And Tasmania is like, yeah, no, we can run with this. But like that's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Also, my Twitter picture, that's in Tasmania. I'm hanging out with a kangaroo. Or a wallaby. Fuck. I don't know the difference. It was very soft. Okay, that was boring.
I was going to say, you probably want to get the species right.
I mean, it's adorable and it hops and it has soft fur.
That's all that matters. While we're talking about transgender issues.
While we're talking about kangaroos.
While we're talking about trans issues, so the Trump administration this week basically wants to erase them out of existence.
Yes.
And the way they're doing it is basically saying they're fighting for a policy that would say you're locked out, trans people would be locked out of federal civil rights protection. So if you work for the government, they could fire you just for being trans, and it wouldn't be discrimination under what the Trump administration is proposing, in part because their definition of your gender defines sex as male or female, unchangeable, and determined by the genitals that you're born with. Because, according to them, that is grounded in science, unquote.
Hey, you know what? It's super not. Can we talk about that for a minute?
Mm-hmm.
So, 1 in 1,500 to 1 in 2,000 newborns have atypical genitals. A lot more people than that are born with subtle forms of sex anatomy variations. A lot of them won't show up until later in life. it's just like, so this idea that, where's the rest of it? My printer started printing on two sides, and it's really just
it's messing with you,
salting my game pretty hard.
I mean, think about stuff that could happen if this proposal goes through. An elderly, the way they want to discriminate, you could have a transgender woman turned away from a hospital in certain cases for an emergency. You could have insurance companies deny trans people for transition-related care.
So some babies born with male genitalia have an extra X chromosome, a condition that's known as Klinefelter syndrome. Androgen insensitivity syndrome, a person has an XY chromosome. So I guess my point is, I caught it.
Good catch.
Thank you. I guess my point is this sort of idea that we have of like up until 5 years ago, gender was really easily defined, and it was male or female, and if you're born with a penis, you're male, and that's how it works. When the reality is, A, sex and gender aren't the same thing, and B, it's never been that simple. There have been
just because it's new to you doesn't mean it's new.
Right. So I mean, up until pretty recently, and probably still happening, if a baby was born with ambiguous genitalia, a lot of times the doctor would just like pick one and be like, okay, you're a girl, and we're gonna chop your bits up to make it look more feminine. And then that's just how they live their life. And so to pretend that this is a new concept, this has been happening for literally ever.
One of the nastiest parts of the proposed policy is they said any dispute about one's sex would have to be clarified with genetic testing. Which
who are we protecting here?
Conservative Christian feelings is what this is all about, because that's the one group. And again, I've heard this mentioned before. In other elections, you might have said, let's talk about gay marriage. Let's talk about abortion, because we need conservative Christians to get to the polls, because this is what's on the line. Well, guess what? You can't say, hey, same-sex marriage, it's scary, get to the polls to prevent it.
Because it happened, and we're all pretty fine.
Yeah, everything's fine with that. They can't use that as a boogeyman anymore. They are already using abortion. That's what the whole Supreme Court debate was all about. But they're like, oh, no, we need more people. What can we do? What can we do? Which minority group can we stick it to?
Right.
So that conservative Christians are like, yes, this is a policy that needs to go through. This will get me to the polls at the midterms because we need more Republicans to pass this through. That's the reason it's happening.
They're just using trans people as a boogeyman, which...
Because they think it's an easy target.
Yeah. Maybe because it's a relatively small population, so it's easier to...
I think that's part of it, but I also think they think that that trans people don't have the sort of support from the broader community. So it's easier to pick on them, just like it's easier to pick on Muslims. I think they get this in their heads. Like, let's pick on Muslims and not other religious minorities because no one's going to defend them. Sure. And yes, people are defending them. And same thing with trans people. At least, again, I'm in this liberal bubble, I know. But at least when this policy came through, it was overwhelmingly criticized. Like, no one and obviously my circles was saying this was a good idea.
Right.
But it seemed like it wasn't just my circle. It seemed like a lot of people just saw this as pretty petty.
Exactly. That's the exact word. It's petty and it feels vindictive.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to do this. Yeah. You're doing it to be a dick. Well, yeah. You're doing it to get conservatives out to the polls.
And don't you feel like that's a defining thing in Trump's presidency?
Cruelty.
It's cruelty. We're going to pick a target. We're going to pick a victim. We're going to pick somebody who's disenfranchised anyway and just shit on them further. And I just don't...
Because that's what Jesus loves.
Because that's what Jesus would do. And I think and I hope that is why I'm hoping that this is sort of a dead cat bounce. I'm hoping this is sort of the death rattle of this sort of thing, because I hope that kids growing up, even if you're in a relatively small bubble, I didn't know transgender was a thing till I was in college. Mm-hmm. Kids these days know that it's a thing, so I just
like same-sex marriage isn't an issue for them,
right?
Because they all know gay people.
So I'm hoping that for that reason, just normalizing the way we've normalized gay people, the way we're doing our best to normalize the trans community, I'm hoping that this is just the last gasping breath of old angry people who don't like change, and change is happening to them, and it's happening quickly. And not to be sympathetic toward them, but like in the last 20 years, a lot has changed culturally speaking. And maybe that's scary, but instead of going with it, they're digging their heels in until their last gasping breath.
Like you said, this happens all the time. This isn't new. This is just the latest iteration of it. But, I mean, be aware who's targeting, who's being targeted, who is doing the targeting, who's supporting it.
Right.
Keep that in mind. And again, if you're going to sit this one out in the midterms, like,
hey guys,
this is who is at stake. I'm telling you, there are so many people who don't have the luxury of voting for whatever reason, or maybe they can't physically, or they have other issues where they can't vote for some reason. When you have the ability to,
right,
and you're not going to, it makes a difference, if for no other reason than to just push up the numbers so people realize they're not alone. Because there is a difference between winning 51-49 and like 80-20. Not the end result, but what that means, what it signifies, how people react to those numbers.
And if there was a huge landslide for the Democrats, one would hope that maybe the GOP would like have to do some soul searching and say, well, we can't rely on our angry conservative white, mostly male base anymore, because that is a demographic that's shrinking, which is why they're so angry. I don't know. I genuinely, really and truly hope that anybody who is listening to this right now and who lives in the United States and is eligible and able is going to vote. Early voting has already started in a lot of parts of the country. I know in Illinois, Hemant and I just went out to dinner, and I don't know if you saw the booth behind us. They all had their "I voted today" stickers on.
Yeah.
So there's absentee ballots, there's mail-in ballots.
I'm planning to do it on election day because it's funner for me. But whatever, do it. What are you waiting for? Why?
Please.
Why?
Oh, guys, if you like anything that we say, or if you don't, vote. Please. We need
vote
this.
for a Democrat who will make us mad. I would appreciate that.
I would love to be mad at a Democrat for a change.
Give me that option.
Yeah.
That would be a nice change of hate.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure I've said this before in the show, but I look back. I use Time Hop, which is like a thing you posted this day in the last however many years of your social media history. And so a lot of times I come up with shit I used to write about for Friendly Atheists.
From
and
like 5-6 years ago?
Yeah, from 2012 is when I was writing for and like, yeah, there was still some really despicable shit, like the Todd Aiken stuff was happening. But some of the stuff that I was writing about, I'm like, oh, you sweet summer child. Like you spent 2 hours writing a piece about that. Like,
like people in the church-state separation circles were mad at Obama because he was allowing certain types of discrimination using federal money for groups that were doing secular types of work. So if you gave a Catholic group money to run some sort of charity or distribute goods after a hurricane, they could staff themselves and discriminate in who they hired to staff it. Now, that is a problem. Obama should have been criticized for it. He was criticized for it. But that compared to everything else happening now, I wish I could.
Small stakes.
I wish I could be mad at the first thing. Let's go to a different issue altogether, and this is just a perennial whipping topic for us. Ark Encounter.
Talk about Ark Encounter now.
No, we must. We must. No. I'll make it quick. Don't worry. I'll make it quick.
Hemant, I think how many episodes have we released? 250?
Like a lot.
I think for a 300th episode, we need to go to Ark Encounter. I think you owe me a trip to Kentucky.
No one owes anyone a trip to
Ark Encounter.
Here's the news. Part of this you've heard before, part of this you have not heard before. Because the public records allow us to know how many people are buying tickets, not getting free ones, but buying tickets to Ark Encounter.
Our 250th episode is coming up. We should do something.
Look at that. We should. We won't. We should.
We can barely get our shit together to record once a week.
The public records show how many people are visiting Ark Encounter and paying tickets for it. And it's been going on long enough now, thanks to a paleontologist in Kentucky named Dan Phelps, who does a great job of getting these records, that we can now compare month to month from last year to this year. And what we found starting in July, when they started overlapping, is that, okay, in July they had fewer people visiting than last July. Okay. That seems like an apples to apples comparison.
It's called Same thing. Year over year fall.
Yes. In August, the data we had, it also showed a drop from the previous August. And now we have numbers for September. Here's what you want if you want raw numbers. 69,207 people bought tickets in September.
Okay.
But last September, it was over 83,000. And the point I want to make here is that not only have these past 3 months shown a drop in visitors from the same time last year, the drop is getting progressively bigger.
Really?
Yeah. Like the drop in attendance in July was over 6,000. Then it was 8,000. Now it's over 14,000. Like, this is a bigger gap month by month. And we're getting into the months where no one visits because it's cold out and the kids are in schools.
Yeah.
So, interesting. Do you want a happy story?
Yeah.
I do have a happy story for you.
Okay.
And by happy, I just mean not related to any of the other stuff.
Okay.
This is a new product that I did not know existed, and I almost feel mad that I didn't think this would exist, but it does.
Tell me
A
everything.
website called Fresh, which I believe is also sold at
Fresh?
Sephora, like the makeup store.
Okay.
There's a brand called Fresh, and they are now selling chapstick.
Sure.
$26.
Okay.
Yeah, plus shipping and handling if you buy it online. But it's special chapstick because they make different, flavors?
Yeah.
Is that the right word for it, for chapstick? Different flavors depending on your astrological sign. So there's a Pisces chapstick
That's
and an
excellent.
Aries chapstick.
Does the Pisces chapstick taste like fish? Is that gross? Is that the grossest thing I've ever said?
That really is. But so the question is, what's different? How would you know? If you lost the labels, could anyone tell? Like, oh, that's the Gemini
this is
chapstick.
So harmless, Hammond.
No. You know who's using this? That 11-year-old. Here, look. Here's some questions
God.
we want to know that we were writing about. What's in the ingredients? Are they tailored to the movement of the planets? Do Leos have more chapped lips than Tauruses?
I'm separating myself from this. I think it's good, clean fun.
No.
We're
And the real
talking
question
about an
is-
entire community of people losing their rights.
And chapstick. All-encompassing show here. It's the same I want people to do the experiment. Take the labels off, trade it up. Let's see if all the Sagittarii figure out which one is theirs. It's not going to happen. The thing that surprised me the most is that Gwyneth Paltrow didn't think of this for Goop.
Oh, that's a pretty good joke.
It's something else. You're welcome.
So I'm a Libra, so I bet my chapstick would taste like brass.
I don't
like
think that's
scales,
how it works.
Right?
Sure. Yes.
Virgo. Oof.
Right.
Don't want to get in there. That's uncomfortable. What's your sign, Hammett?
Pisces.
Fish.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. I guess I need that chapstick.
Is this a good show?
No. Okay, let's talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Oh, sure.
So the museum.
Breaking news from
Breaking
Hammett.
news.
The Dead Sea Scroll.
Get off this show. So the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., this is the place that was started by the family, the Green family that runs Hobby Lobby. This is their museum because they have a lot of money and they don't know what to do with it. So they made a museum dedicated to showing you how important the Bible has been throughout history. And one of the exhibits that they had are several artifacts that are collectively known as the Dead Sea Scrolls, or at least relic parts of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And this is basically, if these were legit, what these are like early copies of the Old Testament, older than any other version of the Bible that we have.
Gotcha.
So if you actually had the Dead Sea Scrolls and they really were what they were purported to be, you have something written thousands of years ago that suggests, hey, in the game of telephone known as the Bible, this is what they were saying way back when. And hey, look, it's pretty close to, it is almost identical to what we say now that the Old Testament says. That ought to give the Bible legitimacy, because this is the story that's been passed down generation after generation.
If two people say the same story, that makes it fact.
That's
it's
the
called
argument.
Science, Hammett.
That's the argument in the Museum of the Bible. Well, it turns out they underwent forensic testing for some of these scraps. And they found out that 5 of the fragments, and I think they had like 9 or 11 fragments, but 5 of them, quote, show characteristics inconsistent with ancient origin. And therefore, they're not going to be shown in the museum.
Do they have, was it made like in 2015 or like, is it just?
I don't know that they can pinpoint a date when it was made, but what they're saying is you said, I mean, in theory, these are supposed to be thousands of years old.
Sure.
They're not. That's what we know because we know what those relics are supposed to look like and what they would be covered with and what chemicals we would see, and these don't have them. And one of the, there's a couple of ways to go with this, but one of the things is the Green family has so much money that they were just buying up whatever people said were relics.
Oh,
with
you mean they
no
weren't being
due
skeptical
diligence.
about their purchase?
Believe it or not, the Museum of the Bible people didn't know how to be skeptical. They were just, people knew they were buying it too, so they're like, well, we got something for you. And they're like, excellent, just give it to us. One of the Green family members told the reporter, like, yeah, I don't know where we specifically got these from.
Hey, guys, you're supposed to track that.
It's a museum. What are you doing? But yeah, and again, this is the same company, the Green family in the museum. These are the same people who remember smuggled artifacts from like Iraq a while ago so they could fill up the museum with stuff. And again, the joke that's ongoing with this, it's not an original, trust me, is like, oh, they found out that these Dead Sea Scrolls are fakes. Who's going to tell them about the rest of the Bible? Of course. But it is weird that like they're removing the stuff from the exhibits. But what are they putting up there then? Like, you just need citation needed signs all over the museum here.
Here's my question. Why do they trust these?
The black market of Bible shit?
No. Okay, that I understand.
Yes.
But why do they trust these like forensic investigators? Because these are the same people who think that the earth is probably older than 6,000 years.
You know what it is? It's one of the things the Green family said when this place opened. I don't know if they...
We're going to believe some science when it's convenient to us.
No. They said, we are not doing the sort of thing Ken Ham is doing in Kentucky.
Oh.
They said, we are not trying to convert you. We're not trying to convince you this version of the Bible is correct and other versions or other interpretations are wrong.
Sure.
We want to show you the role the Bible has played throughout history so that, you know, Jews and Muslims and Hindus could walk into the museum and still get something out of it, even if you don't buy into the Jesus myth.
I mean, and I completely, if you're going to honestly do that and be intellectually honest with it, yeah, I think that'd be really important. I mean,
because you can talk about how the Bible was formed and created without getting into the supernatural stuff. Granted, they want to do both.
Right.
But that is their claim to the Museum of the Bible.
I would argue, so I was a literature major at Ball State University, and I would argue that I was at a disadvantage in a lot of my classes because literature is rife with biblical references and allusions. And they all just went straight over my head. Like, we had to read Genesis. I was like, there's 2 Genesises? This is madness. But even in The God Delusion, in Richard Dawkins' book, he has a couple pages or a chapter or something dedicated to, like, ways that the Bible has influenced culture. Because that's undeniable, right? You cannot deny that the Bible
a lot of high schools, a lot of states have passed laws that allow high schools to teach the Bible as literature from a secular point of view, even though that boundary line is frequently crossed.
Right.
And that is a problem.
And I think that's a really interesting problem to solve because I do think that it's valuable to have some biblical knowledge. But how many people, it seems like there's a fair few, there's not many people out there who are interested in teaching it who can also be objective about it and treat it like any other, teach it like you teach Beowulf.
And that is what the Greens purport to want to do with this museum.
Can we go there? Can we go to DC?
No, yeah, sure.
Yes.
All right. Patreon, get on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just funny that these people didn't authenticate these things that they claim grants legitimacy to the Bible.
Sure.
Surprise, surprise.
I mean, I'm impressed. Okay, credit where credit's due. I'm impressed that they had them tested instead of just being like, well, this is kind of brown, so it's probably old.
I could be wrong about this. I don't think they were like, we should have them tested. I think the reason is there were reporters who were like, these are totally fake. They're like, don't you worry. We'll get them tested and confirm that you're
redacted.
that you're fake news. Oh, no.
Uh-oh. We've done a bad.
Oh, to sit in that board meeting.
I know.
to find out.
Oof. That's not great.
Here is a genuinely interesting story. I'm curious to hear your take on this. In Australia, last year, there was a royal commission in Australia that last year looked into religious abuse, sex abuse, child abuse in the Catholic Church. They did it with Jehovah's Witnesses because there was rampant sex abuse of children in these religious institutions.
Correct.
And elsewhere, but really religious institutions. And one of the things this commission did is they put forth a long list of recommendations as to how we move forward as a country, including these religious institutions. Talk about this is how you be transparent. This is how you can prevent this from happening in the future. And you should adopt our recommendations.
Okay.
It's not a law. You don't have to. But if you care about this stuff, you should. One of the recommendations was the government owes the people of Australia an apology for all the times it hasn't provided the right oversight. It hasn't punished the people who are responsible for these crimes. And this week, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, actually issued that formal apology. Imagine the State of the Union address where the president talks to the country and everyone in Congress. That's essentially what he did to Parliament. And I'm going to tell you part of what he said. Today, Australia confronts a trauma, an abomination hiding in plain sight for far too long. Today, we confront a question too horrible to ask, let alone answer. Why weren't the children of our nation loved, nurtured, and protected? Why was their trust betrayed? Why didn't we believe? I'm skipping around here. Today, we dare to ask these questions and finally acknowledge and confront the lost screams of our children.
Wow.
Mr. Speaker, today as a nation, we confront our failure to listen, to believe, and to provide justice. And again, today we say sorry to the children we failed, sorry to the parents whose trust was betrayed and who have struggled to pick up the pieces, sorry to the whistleblowers who we did not listen to, sorry. This goes on for a while.
Sure.
It was a fine. That's a good speech. Now the question is, did that have a point? Because it doesn't fix their mistakes, and it's not action that they are taking to move forward. It's a nice symbolic gesture.
Yes.
So that's my
yes,
question.
I think that's fair. If that is not followed by action, it is hollow. But I think it's an important step in the right direction, to be sure. And I think, here's what I think. I think that obviously, I am not into religion. I think religion as a whole is harmful. I don't necessarily think burning it all to the ground is always the answer, despite my rhetoric. But I think a big problem we, as an American society, certainly, and it seems like it was the same in Australia, is that we hold religion to different rules than we do anything else. So if the YMCA had these allegations, had a fraction of the allegations against it, we would shut that shit down.
The YMCA is a religious institution.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, that's a good point.
Failed.
God damn it. What's a non-religious?
It's not public school or whatever.
I say the Girl Scouts of America, which is not religiously affiliated, right?
Not religious, private organization.
But if there was the sort of rampant abuse that went through that, we would shut it down in a minute. But because there's this sort of halo around, no pun intended, around religion, people are so afraid to criticize it that it lives in a different plane and it lives by different rules than anybody else.
One of the other recommendations that has not been taken up by the Catholic Church, and again, the government can't control all the church's stuff unless it bleeds into criminal investigations and such. But
even then, they don't do anything about it.
Even then, they don't do enough, yeah. One of the things was if someone confesses to abuse in the confessional booth, priests have to report that to the authorities, just as a school teacher would have to report that if they found out.
So you said this is in Australia?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the church has rejected that. They don't want to. They say if you tell us something in confession, it's a secret. We don't care what it is, and people have been harmed because of that. Because even the criminals are like, well, I can feel better about myself by bearing my soul to the priest in a confessional booth because they ain't going to tell anybody.
So wild.
So it's an apology. It's a symbol. It's like thoughts and prayers, but like we're saying, maybe more than that. But it's action is what matters because the apology is where you want to go, but actually put this into practice.
No, I think that it's more, I think it's beyond thoughts and prayers because I mean, do you remember maybe 4 or 5 years ago when Obama mentioned non-believers in the State of the Union?
Yes.
And just that acknowledgement of that
that we're a nation of different religions,
yes.
this, and non-believers.
Yes, and non-believers. Yeah. And that felt so good and so gratifying. So, like, there's
and it was a symbol.
Yeah,
right.
And there's a reason words hold power because they do make, I feel more acknowledged when that's the case. So, like, yes, it's not bringing down the hammer on Catholic Church abuses in Australia, but acknowledging it has to be the first step. And acknowledging it and saying, we fucked this up bad. We did a big thing badly, to quote Aaron Sorkin for some reason.
Yeah. To be sure, a lot of people found it a powerful apology. There was one victim who I thought said exactly what we're talking about, which is if they think saying sorry is going to finish it, it's not. There is still so much to be done.
It's a beginning, not an end.
It has to be the beginning.
It's a beginning, not an end, to be sure.
So there's that.
Yeah, that's kind of nice.
Here's a happy story, and then I want to get to one of the ones
you haven't been
brought up.
You've been kind of skipping over all my stories, but that's fine. I'm not mad. Go ahead,
Let me take over. No, this falls into the same line of what the government is doing. Arizona had a program. Arizona is one of the states where kids don't get vaccinated as much as they should.
Cool.
Part of that is because people are ignorant and they fall for the lies about, how there's totally proof that vaccines cause whatever disease you want to cause. And there are religious objections to it. So in Arizona, they had a online course intended to educate citizens about vaccines.
Are you using educate in scare quotes or literally educate?
Actually educate them about what vaccines did, how they work, like what the side effects are or are not. And it was a perfectly fine optional educational course.
I feel a butt coming.
Oh, yeah. The problem is after they said this optional course was available and stuff, people started complaining. And by people, I mean anti-vaxxers who said a couple things. One is they said, well, it's optional now, but you're going to make it mandatory.
Sure.
There's nothing anti-vaxxers hate more than mandatory education. And of course, people are like, I have religious objections to it. How dare you tell me that I'm wrong? You're making a jack-off motion.
I sometimes forget people can't see me.
I know. And so what did Arizona do as a result of the complaints? They have canceled
you don't fucking
the
say.
Optional statewide vaccination education program because welcome to the United States. Yay.
Just why do we keep folding to these people?
I don't know. Even a Republican state representative said, I'm not sure why providing information is seen as a negative thing. And she was
Republican said
a Republican
that?
in Arizona.
Did this Republican know about the Republican Party?
Good question. She's the chairwoman of the House Health Committee. She helped create the program. She knew that this was a good program. And basically, when someone asked why this was happening, why they were canceling the program, she actually wrote back, this is a different health official, not the representative. Someone wrote back, we're sorry we couldn't make a go of this. Strong forces against us. That was it. That was her
you're
response.
You're the government, so I feel like you've got some
and the
strength
strong
behind
forces
you.
Are liars. They're uneducated. They're misinformed. Who cares what they say and when they complain about it? Just say, you're wrong, so we're going to keep doing this.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same.
This is worth the pushback.
It is, and it's the same as like there's both sides to things, or we need to hear everybody out. No, not everybody has a valid opinion. Like, not everybody's opinion is valid and based in fact. And just because you have that opinion doesn't mean we all have to deal with your garbage opinion. Like, yeah. I just stop. Like, everybody just shut up for like 1 second, and maybe let's like let scientists think about science and dictate anyway, it's just frustrating. Hammett, like, why do we keep having to do this?
I blame Jenny McCarthy for all of my problems.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's just easier.
And was Jim Carrey an anti-vaxxer, or were they just married?
Oh, he was. He's less so now, or at least he's silent about it. I haven't figured him out yet. Can't decide if I like him or don't.
No, sidebar, let me tell you why you don't like Jim Carrey.
Yes.
He was... Okay, do you remember... Did you ever see Man on the Moon when he played Andy Kaufman?
No.
Okay, do you know who Andy Kaufman is?
Yes.
You said the name
Funny
without me
dude.
prompting. Good.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Look at me. Pop culture expert right here.
So...
As long as it's before 2003.
So, Jim Carrey famously was like a method actor. Do you know what method acting is?
Took on the persona of
Yeah,
Andy
it was
Kaufman.
just like always in character.
Yeah.
So they did this documentary about, and it just came out maybe last year, about the making of that movie. And holy fucking Christ, Jim Carrey comes off as the most insufferable wang ever. Like
Really?
I thought it was a good... I mean, I saw it in theaters. I haven't seen it
Was he
since.
a dick as the character? Or
It wasn't that he was a dick. He was just insufferable. And like he would talk to Andy Kaufman's actual real family as Andy Kaufman.
Oh, that's
and I
just
was
freaky.
like, that's the worst. Mikey, what was that documentary called about Jim Carrey playing Andy Kaufman? If he can't remember, there's no hope for the universe. Anyway.
Pretty sure he just gave you the finger.
He did not.
On...
Anyway, the point is we don't like Jim Carrey.
I see.
He seems insufferable, and he's an anti-vaxxer.
It's
like Andy and Jim or something.
Jim and Andy.
Is it Jim and Andy? It was Jim and Andy.
The things
Mikey.
I do for you.
Good night, honey. Anyway, so we don't like Jim Carrey. I guess this
see.
is the moral of that story. That
At
documentary
Jessica.
was exhausting. Yeah, again, at JESSICA is definitely my Twitter handle, and you'll definitely find me there. Are you done with your Vaxxer thing?
What do we got?
God, I've got a couple of things. Oh, I want to go back to I actually had wanted to try to package this in with our talking about trans rights, but I think it's worth revisiting. Caitlyn Jenner.
Oh, this should be good.
Admitted she was wrong.
Go on.
I think this just dropped today. She did an opinion piece in, I think, the New York Times. So Caitlyn Jenner, for those of you who don't know, is probably one of the more famous trans people, trans women on the planet, like publicly transitioned. And she's affiliated with the Kardashians, I think, and also was a decathlon winner. I don't know. She's famous as hell. So anyway, she transitioned, and she's an advocate for trans rights. She's also a rich white person, and so is a Republican. And
supported Trump.
And supported Trump. So she caught a lot of flack, rightly so, for supporting Trump and supporting the Republican Party in general, because she was apparently steadfast in her beliefs that the Republican Party was going to do right by the trans community, because history has taught us nothing, Caitlyn.
This is the Washington Post, and this is the thing she said,
Thank
talking
you.
about what you just got to. I believed I could work within the party and the Trump administration to shift the minds of those who most needed shifting when it comes to these rights. And of course, the whole time she's been talking about this stuff, everyone's been telling her, like,
no,
like,
that's
what are
not
you?
gonna
It's
happen.
the same reaction they had to Kanye, who's also in the Kardashian family.
Oh, yeah.
Who also, they were just like, no, it's just.
What's in the water there?
It's Kardashian
Money.
water. But the whole point is, like, they were saying these things, and everyone else was like, I'm sure you think you can get through to him because he reaches out to you, because he likes you.
And he used empty rhetoric. He said he was a friend of the...
Right.
He said he was a friend of the LGBTQ community. I bet pressed he could not tell you what those letters stood for.
Yeah. And the whole point, everyone's been telling Caitlyn Jenner and Kanye West, like, dude, he doesn't have your best interests at heart.
He's
using you. He's lying to you about this stuff.
Yeah, she said, I've made many trips to Washington to lobby and educate members of Congress and other Washington policymakers and powerful influencers. These meetings were generally positive and almost always led to encouraging conversations. Despite the criticism I received from segments of the LGBTQ community for engaging with this administration, I remain hopeful for a positive change. And there is an element to that I have to begrudgingly respect. I think she thought she was doing the best she could. I think she was very much blinded by her priorities, which were almost certainly financially related.
Yeah, this is another part of the same essay in the Post. my hope...
Should we just do a group reading of
maybe.
a popcorn
My
reading?
hope in them, the Trump administration, was misplaced, and I cannot support anyone who is working against our community. I do not support Trump. I must learn from my mistakes and move forward. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm not as generous as you are in terms of like I begrudgingly respect that she owns up to her mistake there. It's that everyone who follows these issues knew he was lying. Mm-hmm. Everyone knew when you pick Mike Pence as your vice president, we know where this is going.
Yeah.
We've been shouting this from the rooftops to everyone who would listen for years.
Right.
Caitlyn Jenner's the idiot who didn't listen, who said, no, I know better than every organization and all the millions of people who are saying Trump is bad. I'm just going to use my platform, and it's not a small one.
No.
A huge platform to tell people this guy knows what he's doing. And as a result, here's the thing. Caitlyn Jenner is going to be fine, like you said.
Of course she's going to be fine.
She'll be okay after all this.
This was never a Caitlyn Jenner concern about Caitlyn Jenner.
Right. Other trans people, other people who have so much to lose.
And that's what I'm saying. She's prioritizing her personal wealth over anything else. I will, again, I just want to give... It takes a lot to admit you're wrong. When you're in the public eye and you admit you're wrong, it's not easy. It's almost always the right thing to do. And this is what she said. Sadly, I was wrong. The reality is that the trans community is being relentlessly attacked by this president. The leader of our nation has shown no regard for an already marginalized and struggling community. He has ignored our humanity. He has insulted our dignity. He has made trans people into political pawns as he whips up animus against us in an attempt to energize the most right-wing segment of the party, claiming his anti-transgender policies are meant to, quote, protect the country. This is politics at its worst. It is unacceptable. It is upsetting, and it has deeply personally hurt me. So... here's the thing. Yes, she has been wrong for a very, very, very long time, and she was wrong for dumb, selfish reasons. But she understands why she was wrong. At least, A, she's not doubling down, and B, all of the things she said are absolutely true. Yes, they've been true for as long as Trump has been in the public eye, but fuck, at least she's come around and not doubled down on her own bad decisions.
Here's where I take it. No.
Am I being too generous?
Yeah, okay. Because... It's like Nikki Haley or Omarosa coming around and saying, you guys, I was wrong about him. It's like, everyone was saying that to you forever. Just because now you're getting off the Trump train and trying to redeem yourself, like you don't get credit. You shouldn't get credit when it's too late now. The damage is done and it's being continued for a long time. Kanye's doing the exact same thing. Like if any African Americans decide to support Trump because of what Kanye said, I don't know that that's going to happen. But if they do, how many things does Trump have to do to convince you? You didn't listen when everyone was saying it. You know what I don't see in this essay as I'm reading it is here's why I ignored every single person who was telling me I was wrong for a long time.
You're right.
I think it's just a chance at redemption because everyone hates Caitlyn Jenner.
Like she's seen the writing on the wall and realized she needs to. Because
instead of being a trans icon, which I think Caitlyn Jenner was when she came out as such.
100%.
Now everyone's like, you're the chump who thought Trump was good for your cause? Mm-hmm. Like, you're an idiot. And now that's the only thing anyone remembers her for... I think this is just true. All right, this is my chance of redemption.
I guess you're right.
Same thing with Trump voters who are like, I can't believe my job is gone in the coal industry.
Or like the Trump voter whose immigrant husband got deported. Yeah. Like, I didn't think it would happen to me. No, you're right. You're 100% right. I guess I just want to leave space for people to admit that they're wrong. And even if she was so epically and obviously wrong, I just want... space there to say like, hey, I fucked up.
Here's the compromise there.
But the thing is, I don't think we need to like forgive her for everything. I don't think she is like back in the fold. She's not back in our good graces. But at least she's jumped off the Trump train. At least she's seen the error of her ways, even if it took 2.5 years.
This is the one thing that I think is missing in this essay, and we've talked about this whenever we talk about people apologizing for anything. It's fine. We want people to apologize if they did something wrong. You're totally right about that. But that apology kind of has to include, here's why I didn't get it before. here's why I was stupid enough to ignore all the smart people who were telling me I was wrong about this for so long, and here's what I'm doing to make up for it.
Yeah, you're right.
I think all the apologies, all the public ones, especially the Me Too stuff we've seen, like, you got to kind of atone for yourself somehow. Just saying, I screwed up. That's nice. What are you going to do about it? And why did you... You're not oblivious to this. Caitlyn Jenner knows enough to know why people thought Trump was bad. I want to know why she thought she knew better than everyone else, because this is too big of an issue to fuck up this badly.
Yeah. Okay. I guess here one more time to try to like summarize, and this is fruitless, and I'm definitely wrong, but here I go anyway. I almost made him do a spit take. So let's do, not that they are the same, but they both fucked up, a Louis C.K. v. Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah.
Louis C.K. did some fucked up shit, acknowledged he did fucked up shit, and then just withdrew from public life for
a little
9
while.
months, maybe, and then has tried to re-enter into
the comedy
world, having done nothing. The lowest bar is
publicly nothing.
Publicly nothing. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, you're right. He's done nothing to elevate the women he's fucked over. He's done nothing to make the comedy world a safer place for women. He's done nothing of substance. This feels like more something. This feels like the first step to redemption in a more meaningful way than a Louis C.K. step.
Yeah, what's Caitlyn Jenner doing to make sure people never vote for Republicans until they get right on this issue?
Speaking out is not nothing.
But I don't think I saw anything in there that said everyone should vote for Democrats because that's the only party that cares about these issues right now. And even Democrats aren't great on it, but they're better than the other alternative right now.
Yeah, okay, fine. I'll just be wrong. Ugh. I'm just wrong, and I'll sit in my wrongness.
Glad I could put you in your place. Let's talk about other people who are wrong.
Are we talking about me more? Because I don't have time for that. Yeah.
No, so there is a study that came out recently, last week, I think. It's from a ministry called Ligonier Ministries. Don't ask me about their background. Okay. Sure. Basically, they talked to 3,000 self-identifying evangelical Christians.
It's an evangelical sect?
Yes, they're a Christian ministry that conducted this survey. Okay. Let's assume for a second the survey is legit in the sense of their methodology and everything.
Let's put our critical thinking hats in the corner for a minute.
So they talked to 3,000 evangelicals, and what they really wanted to know is, what do evangelicals believe when it comes to what are supposed to be evangelical beliefs? Here's what I mean by that. They said things like, do you believe most people are basically good? And most evangelicals, the actual statement was, do you agree with this? Everyone sins a little, but most people are good by nature. 52% of evangelicals agreed with that statement. Most people are good. That literally goes against what evangelical Christianity teaches.
Yeah, they think everyone's sinners?
Everyone is a sinner.
But wait, isn't that why you got baptized and then you're not a sinner?
Oh, you're still a sinner, but you're redeemed by God. But, so by nature, we are sinners, and we need God to get better. So, but more than half the Christians, evangelicals, are like, nope, I don't believe that. They also said, here's another statement. Do you agree or disagree? God accepts the worship of all religions, including Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Like, there's a path to heaven for everybody. 51% of evangelicals across the board, not just white evangelicals, but all evangelicals, 51% agreed with that statement that, it doesn't really matter what religion you are. God accepts all of us. God loves us all the same. It's like, that's the definition of your faith. Jesus is the way. That's what you believe.
Yeah.
And the other statement that got some attention is a statement that basically said Jesus was the first and greatest being created by God. And that took me a second to figure out what they were getting at. The first and greatest. He's not the first. Adam was the first. And Jesus wasn't created by God, according to evangelicals. Jesus is God. That's the whole Holy Trinity thing.
Right.
So he wasn't created by God. He's just a different presentation of God, or a different form of God. So anyway, this wasn't a trivia exam. This is getting to the heart and the core of what they believe. And if evangelicals don't believe the very things they're supposed to believe, like, this gets into the heart of, like, are they real evangelicals? Well, they say they are.
Well, I mean, we see this so much. Like,
if you go off of their beliefs and not their labels, they don't believe the things they're supposed to. It's like Catholics who say, well, I don't think a communion wafer, a consecrated communion wafer, is literally the body of Christ. That's what you signed up for.
Or I disagree with the thing the Pope said. Like, you don't get that privilege to disagree.
Yeah, or if they say homosexual acts are intrinsically immoral, are intrinsically disordered, which is what the Catechism says.
Right.
That's what the church believes. I don't care if you don't like it or if you think abortion is acceptable in some cases. You don't get to say that and say, I believe I'm a Catholic and I accept all the Catholic doctrine. Or at least you got to say, well, I'm a Catholic, but I don't believe everything the Catholic Church teaches.
Yeah.
These are evangelicals who are like, no, I'm an evangelical because I believe in what evangelicalism teaches. They don't. And again, there was a survey, I think, 6 or 7 years ago from Gallup that said if we ask basic questions about various religions, like what do people think? What do Christians think about this? Atheists scored highest on that list.
Of course, yeah.
And I think Jews were next and really close.
That tracks.
Because they understood what all the religions believe. And the people who knew least about what different religions believed were, some of the people who have power right now. So I think this gets to the question of, like, these are not minor quibbles. If you claim to follow a religion, you don't get to pick and choose core doctrine. This is not, does God love gay people? Is God okay with same-sex marriage? Because you could be a Christian and disagree on how to interpret the Bible on this. But the things we just talked about, these are not debatable. These are the core principles of what it means to be an evangelical. And if evangelicals don't get that, what does that mean? One of the people they spoke to for this survey, one of the leaders of the people who conducted the survey, said these results are a serious cause for concern. And one of the things he said is the evangelical world is in great danger of slipping into irrelevance when it casually forgets the Bible's doctrine.
Yeah. I mean, he's not wrong.
No.
But also, here's to me, the flip side of this is I think we've had this conversation quite a few times. We talked about it just now with Catholics and gay rights and things like that. I guess my question is, what do we do with that? You know what I mean? Like, because I can say I have Catholic, I don't want to brag, I have Catholic friends.
Look at you.
I have Catholic friends.
Go back to you have friends.
Okay, first of all, you're the one who doesn't have friends.
Yeah. I can't believe you can divide your friends up into subgroups.
I have ones of friends. So my Catholic friends definitely, for the most, I don't think any of my friends are like raging homophobes.
Right. So the question is, what would they say about their beliefs? Do they acknowledge that the church says something?
Yeah, but then what's the next step after that for me? So say I have been raised in the Catholic Church, my family is Catholic, I believe in the bulk of what the Catholic Church teaches, I know the flaws that are there, I still choose to align myself with the Catholic Church. Even if I actively say, I don't think the Pope speaks for God, or I don't think gay people are necessarily sinners, or I don't believe abortion is akin to murder, any of those things, then what? Then what do I do with that?
It's a good question. It's a question as them, because they're the ones that have to deal with that cognitive dissonance. But to me, it's like, you can't be an atheist and say, well, God might, or, God probably exists, but sure. I'm an atheist. That doesn't make any sense. Like, you had one job.
But this also, this kind of smacks to me of like this sort of smugness that people don't like about us. Which is, oh, you're a Catholic. Do you think gay people are all going to hell? Like, what is our end? I mean, is our end goal to say, like, if you don't believe in this, maybe you should re-examine what else we're doing?
That's exactly where I was going to go with.
Is this the best way
I think
to do it?
I think what you take from this survey is you can point out that, look, even evangelicals, the people who go to church, who call themselves by that label, they have very different ideas of what it means. So, which also means the people who claim to speak for conservative Christians or who speak for the evangelical church.
Do you mean politicians or like church leaders?
Both, and the church leaders who have the ear of the president right now. People like that. Like, no, you don't you don't even represent your own church on this. You can't say, here's what we should do about trans people because this is what my faith teaches. No. That's what you and a handful of people believe. And this is why I think it's so important that we have people like Christians on the religious left who are going out and saying, no, we want a government to act the way Jesus acts, and what Republicans are doing has nothing to do with that.
Of that.
And we need, and this is this goes to the media, this goes to the people who are liberal but who call themselves a religious label. We need those voices to speak up more, to say, look, I am Catholic, but this is what the Catholic Church is doing with their faith, and I don't support it.
Sure.
And I'm going to walk out of the church, even if culturally I feel like I'm Catholic and I love the traditions. Like, I cannot support a church that has this policy. And I think if you keep exploring, if you keep pointing out that even Christians don't believe the very basic tenets of their faith,
right,
I think that helps along the way to say, look, you don't believe the stuff your faith teaches. Where does this what's the next domino to fall?
Sure.
Because let's keep going down this path. Because you started, that's good.
Yeah.
Keep going.
If you had your druthers, what do you think would be the quickest tool toward change?
Change where?
Let me finish my question.
Yeah.
I think it'll be more clear.
Okay.
Do you think it would be more effective to see overall change if every non-homophobic person who's had premarital Catholic left the church and said, fuck it, like, you don't speak for me, church, this is garbage, versus staying there and saying, like, hey, Catholic Church or evangelical church or whatever, I still believe in you. I still think that you have value. However, you need to modify your rhetoric because this is not doing it for me anymore.
It's a great question, and the answer, I think, almost certainly is the first one.
Oh my God, I think it's definitely the second one.
Really?
But go ahead.
No, I think they need to walk out, because if they are in the church and they say, I want to change the church from within, well, the church, so let's talk about your Catholic friends. If they go to Mass, if they have their wedding in the church or whatever, and they're giving money to the church, and they are being counted among the numbers in terms of attendance and how big the church is, or they send their kids to a Catholic school, as far as the church is concerned, you're supporting the stuff we do. We don't have to listen to a damn thing you say. If they walked out and took their money and their kids with them, and you're not getting their kids either, so that's more money you're not getting down the line, that, I think, would be the pressure some of these churches need to say, well, we're dying if we don't cater to what they need. Because when you're in the church and you're supporting it and trying to make your voice heard, they don't have to listen to you because they have what they need from you.
Here's my counterpoint.
Yeah.
I think you're right that change would be quicker if there was a mass exodus. I think we're kind of seeing that in Mormonism, right? Like there's sort of a pretty significant drop in their roles because of a lot of these really antiquated views they have. But I think long term, I don't think we're going to eradicate religion. I just don't think that's a thing that's going to happen. So I think if we're talking about in the next 10 years, we want to see these changes. Yes, people walking out of their churches and doing whatever. If we're talking in the next generation, the next 2 generations, if we can have voices within the church that say, like, listen, let's hold on to the good stuff and just release the shit. Let's just release the garbage that's actively harming people and not helping us. I think we could see in 2 generations, because, you know...
Has it happened in terms of stuff like same-sex marriage? Because that's been long enough.
I mean, there's definitely huge swaths of the Christian community that embrace, like, fucking walk around Chicago.
Yes.
Every other church has a gay flag in front of it.
You're right. Those are not the non-denominational evangelical megachurches that have the power. And so the question is, but there are evangelical Christians, I would say, who don't think the people we always see in the news, who have Trump's ear, that they don't think those people have it right. But there's no pope in the evangelical church. You can't change it.
And I think the Catholic Church, the Mormon Church are always going to be anomalies because they're a top-down religion for sure.
Yeah.
Whereas an evangelical church does not have a central point of power.
So who creates change inside the evangelical church when there is no top-down? I would say when people start leaving, yes, the segment that remains gets even more conservative.
That's the thing, is they galvanize. This is exactly what happened with like the Conservative Party, is that a lot of people were leaving, and the people who stayed there were like, no, we're going to double and triple and quadruple down on racism and homophobia and transphobia and all of that.
And so who helps? Caitlyn Jenner, who still calls herself a Republican and says, I wish you would change, but you guys aren't listening to me. Or more people voting for Democrats and saying, fuck you to the Republicans. I've had enough of this.
But
that will force them to change because they have no other choice.
Yes, but hypothetically, wouldn't you rather a more socially liberal and socially accepting Republican Party than saying the Democrats are our only hope? If Republicans get in office, they're stripping women of their rights, they're stripping trans people of their rights, they're stripping gay people of their rights. My only choice is to vote Democrat. So now,
I wish we had options.
But yeah, look what's happening in Illinois. We've got J.B. Pritzker, who's not the best, versus Rauner, who's the literal worst.
Like which of the 2 billionaires do you want to support?
Snaky billionaires am I voting for? Wouldn't I rather say, like, let me really put my values on it? Wouldn't I rather say, like, yes, I'm not a Republican, but like, if I vote for Rauner, I'm not concerned about the rights of my LGBT friends or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I think that we're a stronger country and we have two opposing parties that at least are both on planet Earth in terms of what they believe.
I don't think that change is happening from within. I think if you're asking me which of those two, could it? Sure, it could, but it's not. So which way do you convince Republicans that you got to get more moderate on these issues? Everyone votes for the other team because they're saying, I refuse to put up with this party. As much as I'd love to see change from the inside, it's not happening in the cases we've been talking about here. And again, it's silly to keep giving them support when you know they're wrong on all these issues.
Yeah,
I'm not even saying you have to stop believing in God. If you're Catholic and you don't agree with the Catholic Church's dogma on this stuff, I'm not saying stop believing in God. That's a separate conversation we could have. But to say I'm going to support the church and I'm going to send my kids there and I'm going to go there every week, that to me is a problem because they have no reason to take you seriously if you're telling them they're doing it wrong.
Yeah, but individuals never have power. It's the collective, right?
But the priests aren't doing much either in terms of pushing back on these things. They're trying to give it a gentler name, but like, has Pope Francis done anything good for the Catholic Church? Because when he started his reign as Pope, he was seen as good on these issues. Like, who am I to judge? Whatever. Yeah. He's done jack on these issues in terms of their dogma.
You're right.
And again, top down, it's not going to change easily. But come on, if the Pope can't change this stuff, and now we see, he was pretty much just window dressing for the church. I mean, I think it's better right now. Leave the crazy sides. Leave the party that's bad. Leave the churches that are bad. And force them to reckon with the fact that you're taking more people with you out of there until they get better. You're not doing it out of spite. You're doing it out of love, but they're not going to change then.
Yeah, I guess sort of my last thought is if there is a mass exodus and the church is necessarily shrinking, to me, I'm just afraid that would galvanize them and say, like, okay, well, we've lost those people, but we are going to continue to believe what we're going to believe, and we're going to believe it harder than ever, you know?
And I think that's going to happen. But when you have that with a shrinking group of people, it loses its effectiveness. They lose their power. They lose the money. And again, this is one of those things that, fine, in a generation, that group of people aren't going to be around that long.
Right. So,
like, get everyone out of there first. What we don't want are moderates kind of giving them, this goes back to an old atheist argument too, don't let the moderates give them the support they need to sustain themselves. Like, walk out and create that change from the outside. So, totally different subject. This is something that just upset me on a totally different level because it's just an opinion that I didn't like. It wasn't anything evil.
Was it my opinion?
It was not. This was an article for the Religion News Service, Wire Service. It was a rabbi named Jeffrey Salkin. And basically, I'm going to try to paraphrase him in the way I think he would accept as a fair paraphrase of what he wanted to say. Okay. He was saying there is a trend of people who have weddings, but they don't want a religious officiant conducting the ceremony, which makes sense because more people are not religious or different religions coming together. And why have a Catholic priest and jump through all those hoops?
Sure.
Why have a rabbi who doesn't really know you that well? Like, it's one thing if you go there and it's your guy.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely gone to Catholic ceremonies when the priest did get the groom's name wrong.
Yeah, because
like,
they don't
epically.
know you.
Like,
his
name was Brian and he called him Chris or something fucking wild like that.
And here's what Jeffrey Salkin was basically saying. He said, look, I get that. I'm not arguing. I'm not telling you have to have a priest at your wedding. But even if he wanted it, because he is a rabbi. But one of the things he said is that there were two big arguments he wanted to urge couples of if they were considering a non-religious officiant.
Okay.
And one of them was, think about tradition. And here, I'll grant him this to a little bit, but here's what he was saying. The officiant brings something from outside the couple and their immediate circle of family and friends. The officiant can bring something that predates the couple by millennia and will, we pray, live way beyond the couple's time on earth. So, yeah, you can have your friend do a reading. You could have someone else, a friend, speak at the ceremony.
Wait,
but
what?
You're connected to the broader institution of marriage, and that's a good reason to have a religious leader do the ceremony at your wedding. That was one thing. Okay, tradition. If you like tradition, I guess, whatever. I don't have a complaint about that.
Describe my face.
It's not looking happy about this right now.
I'm confused and angry.
There's more.
Is there a name for that emotion?
I
don't understand
like you just
and I will not
something
respond
weird.
Yeah.
Here was his other suggestion. This is the one that bothered me.
Yeah.
He said, out of respect for religious leaders, avoid the path of instant ordination. So if your friend is conducting the wedding, don't go to Universal Life Church, put down $20 or whatever it is, and get your instant
I have a few couples
priest.
I need to call.
Right? Don't get your instant day pass to be a priest.
Yeah.
Because he said that's disrespectful to someone like me who actually went through training to be a rabbi.
Okay,
that
my
title
dude.
he said, real, in quotations, real clergy study long and hard. Speaking for rabbis, we study in a grad program for 5 years, blah, blah, blah. To become a clergy, I mean, if you get the certificate from the Universal Life Church or anything like that, it reduces our sacred tasks and responsibilities. Real clergy officiate and teach and engage in activism and counsel. It diminishes, actually lampoons, our years of training and commitment. Frankly, it's an insult, even though it wasn't intended that way.
Okay, can I give you an
spit out whatever you're eating and let it out.
Just my face has just like bunched up near my nose.
You just ate a lemon. What's going on?
Yeah. It's kind of like my big brother is a teacher by trade.
Yeah.
He has his master's. He teaches for a living. But like, I can help my niece with her reading homework. That doesn't take away anything that my brother does. It's just I want to be there on this particular occasion with somebody I love.
Yeah. And here's the other thing to bring
also,
up with the same.
What the fuck? How insecure is this motherfucker that me marrying my friends at an like what is he talking about?
Here's the legal side of this that he didn't get because he didn't mention this in his piece. If you're an atheist in a lot of states, if you're an atheist who wants to get married to another atheist, you don't want a religious person doing the invocation.
Right.
And you can't just have a friend do the wedding because in some states the law says it's got to be a judge or it's got to be a religious leader. And we've had like different groups. When I say we, the broader atheist community has had to file lawsuits to say those can't be the only options.
Right.
because some of these states say you have to be a religious leader to perform the ceremony, and getting a $20 certificate from like the Universal Life Church was a way to say, I'm a religious leader of this church that no one ever attends. It doesn't matter.
Or you can be a captain on a boat if the musical Anything Goes is based on reality.
And so basically, like, for a lot of us, there was no other option if we wanted a quote-unquote traditional wedding.
Sure.
If we had to have a religious leader, we weren't going to ask a Catholic priest to do it. You had to have a friend with an ordination. And the Universal Life Church, or the quick, cheapy, I'm a priest now places, that's the way to do it until some of these lawsuits are filed, so that now atheists, humanist celebrants, secular celebrants get that title of you're a religious officiant.
Yeah,
that's a separate issue. This guy basically said it's like he didn't realize that there are reasons people get ordained, and it has nothing to do with saying, well, I want the title if I'm going to do this ceremony.
Yeah, like if that shit is not on my resume.
Yeah, if we didn't want to, if we didn't have to go through that process to get the ordination, most of these people wouldn't do it. They did it because they had to.
Yes, and I mean...
And yes, you're not putting it on your resume. You're not saying, I'm a rabbi.
Yeah, like, everybody listen to me. I'm going to stand on, like, a literal rock and give you a sermon. Like, I've officiated 2 weddings. One was my 2 best friends, and first of all, it was a gay wedding. Second of all, it was not in a church. Third of all, weren't like, my one friend is Christian, like one of the couples is Christian, the other is an atheist. They don't go to a church. They wanted to. The reason my husband and I had our friend marry us is because we wanted a person to marry us who was meaningful to us.
Yeah.
And yes, 50 years ago, when everybody went to the same cute little church and had the same pastor growing up, and the same pastor that like baptized you, married you, or whatever like bullshit you always hear about that. Yes, that's very nice. That's a very nice story that a leader and an authority figure in your community was presiding over your wedding. We don't live in that world anymore. And I have the right to have whoever the fuck I want marry me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just... Like,
we're not doing it just to spite you, just because we wanted to get a fuck you on the wedding day.
Less personally.
It's not about you. It's about the wedding.
Put an ad out on Craigslist and get more weddings. And if you're struggling, my good dude, stupid.
What else you got?
I don't know. Have we been going really long?
We really have.
Okay. Well, I mean, again,
talk about the Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Okay,
thing.
I was just that up. So here's a thing that I never do is I pulled a story directly from Hemant's Twitter.
How
which
dare you?
I generally make a point, even sometimes like I'll bring something that Hemant has already reported on, but I do my best to do independent research so we're not just like reading your blog on the microphones. But this is what I saw Hemant tweet this, and I was like, bookmark this, come back this, you're going to talk to this. The headline is, Pastor says on InfoWars that Ruth Bader Ginsburg should be executed for treason, which is the wildest thing I've ever heard.
Not only was the argument that she should be shot is what he said.
Well, I'm going to read your whole thing. I'm just going to go ahead and do a recitation.
You don't even have to, like...
Shut up, I'm going to read it.
All right.
Conservative Christian pastor and conspiracy theorist extraordinaire Rodney Howard Brown is best known for his, quote, holy laughter-based religion ceremonies. Do you know what that means?
Yeah, he basically says, let's all start laughing. There's video of this. And they just start, like, having a giggle storm in the congregation.
It's like speaking in tongues but laughing?
Yes,
okay.
And this brings them closer to God.
Sure. You know what? Listen, there's worse things people have done to be closer to God. Mm-hmm. It was no laughing matter earlier this week. Nice wordplay, Hemant. However, when he subbed in for Alex Jones on InfoWars and said Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg should be executed. Quote, if you hear Bader Ginsburg she talks about the Constitution of America being totally flawed, he complained.
It is.
After Hall recounted Ginsburg's 2012 statement, which I didn't write this down, what was she talking about?
She basically said, look, the Constitution has flaws. That's true. We have to amend it.
Yeah.
That's the way it works.
So it needs amendments. Howard Brown asserted that Ginsburg should have been removed from office because, quote, that was high treason. She should have been impeached immediately. Who's Hall?
I think that was the co-host. And the thing is, if you watch that video clip, as soon as he's done saying that on InfoWars.
The last thing is, I'd have them shot, Howard Brown replied. To me, it's a total violation because how do you pledge to defend the Constitution when you're totally thrown in under the bus? And then the guy was like,
Yeah, the woman who was co-hosting with him was like, ha, 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 ha. We don't do that anymore. Even she was like, dude, you went too far on InfoWars.
Yeah.
Which cracked me up.
So that's wild. And y'all know if you're coming after Ruth Bader Ginsburg on my watch.
By the way, that clip and so many others is from Right Wing Watch, who does such a good job on
such good work. My last thing is that the Trump administration is going to expand religious exemptions to birth control.
Of course they are.
It just makes me want to fling myself off a cliff, so I don't want to talk about that.
All right.
Last thing.
Yes.
Apparently teaching your kids to swear is a good thing according to science.
Oh, really?
A Dr. Emma Byrne, she has a book called Swearing is Good for You, The Amazing Science of Bad Language. She said swearing has been linked to honesty, better credibility, more robust vocabulary, and will help children process and handle anger more efficiently. Learning how to use swearing effectively with the support of empathetic adults is far better than trying to ban children from using such language. So everybody can suck my dick when they complain about my swearing. I
told you I was a good parent. Score.
Yeah.
Do we have any mail?
Yeah. Yes. Okay, I'm going to read. Okay. This is from Mike A. Hi, Hammett. Not addressed to me, and I'm not mad about it. I found your podcast a couple weeks ago, really enjoying it. Pleasantly surprised that you and Jessica are both Chicago-based like myself. Usually, I found that many of these secular skeptic shows are in the East Coast or West Coast. Hashtag elitists. Since you both seem to be pretty active in the area, I was hoping you can help me out. I've been an atheist, I guess, my whole life, but maybe over the last few years, I've felt this desire to get more involved. What I found is there's really not a whole lot to offer atheists around here. I've done meetups with the Freedom from Religion Foundation, Chicago Skeptics, but both, especially the latter, don't have much going on at all and meet infrequently. My work often limits my free time, but is there anything you might suggest that I can do around the area? Maybe I'm missing something. Anyway, if nothing else, I want to say I love your podcast. Keep up the great work. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks. I've heard this question for a lot of cities.
Yeah,
it's not just
that's kind of why
I
brought it. Because I don't think he meant it as a listener question, but I thought it would be something that we can kind of chat about.
What I told him in an email, what I told Mike via email, and I still stand by it, of course, is, look, if you're looking for organizations, what I would do if I were in a new place and trying to find some groups, try meetup.com, try Facebook, search an atheist in your city, see what comes up, or atheist in the biggest city near you. Use synonyms for atheist, at least as far as that goes.
Skeptics.
Yep. Those are good ways to start. But the truth is, there's only a handful of cities that have really robust groups that meet regularly all the time.
And we tend to see it more in traditionally conservative areas. So again, I was just in Houston, which is, I don't want to surprise anybody.
Need it there.
Texas is a pretty conservative place. And so there's a lot of humanist groups because they need it. They need that thing. Whereas I am an out atheist at my workplace and it's not a thing.
Right. And if you're in a big city like Chicago where it is pretty, or in the suburbs of Chicago where it's pretty diversified and stuff in terms of religion, there's not as much of a need. So I'm not surprised that a lot of groups don't meet on a regular basis. Yeah. But the other thing I would suggest is you can try starting your own. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take a lot of resources, but even if you're worried about that, there are groups like any of the ones we mentioned, FFRF, American Human Association, that will help you get one started if there isn't one already there. But that's the thing. If you're just looking for like-minded people, those groups are out there, but all of them, this is a constant issue where you always need someone who's willing to organize, who's willing to lead these
and that's
groups.
hard, and nobody likes to do it.
It's really hard to find. So if there isn't someone already doing it that you can latch on to, be that person too.
Yeah, and what I said is, I think in the Chicagoland area, for sure, it's pretty liberal, and there's definitely plenty of religious folks hereabouts, but I would say for the most part, like, nobody ever asks me, what church do I go to, you know? Mm-hmm. So I would say maybe take a small step back from, like, the atheist and humanist aspect and think of, like, kind of what secondary things you're interested in. So for me, like, I'm an atheist, and my atheism informs my political views. So I've gotten super, super involved in politics this election cycle. So I've been volunteering
and local
there.
Political groups.
Right, local political groups and doing that. Or like I honestly, like some of my closest friends I literally met through like a My Favorite Murder Facebook group, and we're like, do you want to meet at a bar? Can we be friends? None of us as friends. Cool. I play softball, and we met up at a bar before a game. And at one point, I literally said, wait, can all of us say here that our only friends are sitting at this table because we all signed up randomly for this league? Like, I think there is an element in my experience, because I'm a very social person. I definitely need human interaction. Hemant is the diametral opposition of me. He hates seeing me every week, I think. So I think you have to, I think maybe you're narrow casting a little bit by saying I want to hang out with other humanists or atheists or skeptics or whatever. I think that's going to be harder. I think what would be easier is find a different interest that maybe skews that way and find people there. So find another
skeptic adjacent.
So maybe it's politics, maybe it's volunteer. Like I've met friends doing my volunteer work at the Hansen Center in Burr Ridge. I think I think to try to find a community that works for you, they don't necessarily have to be atheists and humanists by name. I think most people have values even if they don't call themselves humanists. So
good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Let us know if we can do anything else. I'm done with my notes. Hemant, anything good happening to you this week?
Baby's birthday. So Older baby's birthday. So we're doing literally nothing. We're staying at home. That was a good shot.
Thank you.
Into the garbage can.
Really
we're just staying at home, celebrating it, and not throwing a party with other human beings because one's enough.
Oh, you said your family. Do you mean literally just like you and your wife?
Maybe.
Because I definitely wasn't invited. I'm not mad about it.
Extended family. No, I don't want other people. It's chaos. I've been to those parties with the kid.
I still want your kid to meet Daddy. I really think they'd get along. I think
maybe.
Literally, like a couple weeks ago, Dottie met a kid, and the kid just grabbed onto her like ears and then her like face flaps.
I understand this because I've been that victim
and
from my
grabbed
child.
On, and Dottie was so fucking chill with it. She's like, "Cool, you're giving me attention. That's great news."
You're explaining most evenings with the children. It's just different parts of my body stretched out and scratched. What are your weekend plans?
You know what? So tomorrow night I'm going. My brother's girlfriend got me for my birthday tickets to the podcast Call Your Girlfriend, which is gonna be in Chicago. So I'm really fucking stoked to see that. We're gonna get sushi, which I love. Also, I've been watching The Haunting of Hill House. Do you watch TV?
No.
Okay. Have you heard of The Haunting of Hill House?
I have, because a lot of people have reviewed it because apparently it's good.
It is very good. So here's the interesting thing is I've talked about the little book club I do with Lee and Amanda, who are the couple I married. We do a Skype book club.
Nice.
And so we decided to read that, and we're like, oh, the show's coming out. Perfect timing. The show and the book could, like, they're related in name and the names of the characters. They're completely different aside from that. But anyway, the show is really good. And just today, my husband hasn't been interested in watching it, but today over lunch I watched, I think it was the 6th episode. And it is maybe my favorite episode of TV I watched in a long time. It's done in long, drawn-out takes. It reminded me a lot of the movie Rope by Alfred Hitchcock, which I'd also recommend. Mm-hmm. But it's just, it's almost play-like, but the camera moves a ton. And just like once in a while you're looking at something, you're like, oh, there's a fucking ghost in the background, and now I screamed and scared my dog, and it's noon. It's really, like...
Interesting.
It's been good television. The acting's really good. It's enjoyable. I would recommend it. Where can I find you on
I'm at Heaven Meta on Twitter. friendlyatheist.com. Go to Patreon /friendlyatheistpodcast.
Yeah, do that. We're like halfway to our goal of doing a live show.
Oh, look at that.
And hey, Mike, when we do a live show, you can meet there and you guys can like all be super good friends with Hammond's wife and my parents, because those are the only people who are going to be at our live show, probably.
No, they're not coming to the live.
Your wife wouldn't come?
Not a chance.
Really? She came to see my stand-up.
That was before the kids.
Oh, good point. Oh, that's a very good point. Like, one time, Heaven and I...
We haven't left the house in 3 years.
No, Heaven and his wife drove out to see me do stand-up. Yeah, this is definitely...
That was fun, by the way.
It was.
But we haven't left the house
4
since.
years ago.
Yes.
But yeah, it was definitely pre-children. But, okay. Cool. Oh, my Etsy shop is Bitches Get Stitched Done. I'm starting to gear for the holidays, so if you want something from me, please put it in sooner than later, because I'm like last year I was so stressed out.
She was.
That this year I'm literally just going to shut down my shop once I get too many orders for me to deal with. Because last year I was also unemployed, so I'm not exaggerating, I would wake up at 8 a.m. and cross stitch until midnight. And you can't do that when you have a full-time job. So I'm just going to shut my shop down at some point when I have too many orders for me to practically handle. Guys, thank you for listening. I feel like this has been a 3-hour show.
Close enough.
Which is weird because we went out to dinner before this, so I was like, ugh, we're definitely going to run out of things to talk about. That's not true.
We'll see you next week, though. It's all good.
Bye.
Bye.